Hey, Michael, thank you so much for joining me on the Wholesome Crypto podcast. I appreciate you taking that time out today to join me. I know you've been contributing and working a lot on your project GM.xyz. And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking. You've been an awesome contributor to the community, and looking forward to finally meeting you.
Yeah, I'm seeing you post all the time. And before we get so much into what started GM, I'm kind of curious about you and what were you doing as a kid, like learning about tech and learning about what we're building in the internet age? Like, was this something you've always been interested in, just tech in general, or have you been like a newfound revelation at some point in your life?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I wasn't a precocious kid at all. I was a pretty normal kid. Not really interested in tech. I wasn't a kid that grew up programming. So I feel like that's like a false narrative that gets passed around a lot. Is like, if you want to like write code and be like a great engineer, like you have to grow up with computers and like be writing, creating your own games at the age of 12. I think that's totally not true. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, and still kind of figuring that out. And I got into computers in college, right? So when I started, I took a class pretty late, my sophomore year in college, and I really loved it, and I decided to major.
So you went right into computer science and finance in college?
Yes. So, and then I didn't even go into tech afterwards. So I almost forgot everying I learned in college, right? So did you
electrical engineering?
Science in college, or?
Yeah, I mean, college was I guess taught me how to be disciplined in a way, and taught me how to use Google and YouTube very well, because that's pretty much where I learned everything I know. But yeah, I mean, I paid for the degree, I guess, so it got me here.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't know if I learned discipline from college, but I probably learned discipline from like my first job out of college. But yeah, I was like, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I ended up working at a hedge fund right out of college. So I wasn't programming at all. I forgot pretty much everything I knew, but I liked investing. So nice. I did that for 4 years. Really liked it. That's when I kind of got into Bitcoin. Just coming.
Well, what was the first time you heard of Bitcoin? Was it somebody at your work saying, "Hey, Mike, this is the next big thing. You got to invest into it," or was it like some friend that you just knew on the out of nowhere who's like, "Hey, Bitcoin's going to become big. You should really look into it"?
No, I mean, everybody has like it's kind of in the news, like going on like for a while, right? Like the Silk Road stuff. Not that I'd never used Silk Road, but like it was in the news, and like people heard, and I always thought it was very scammy. Especially in the 2017 bubble, I didn't participate at all. It was only after the crash in 2017, at the beginning of 2018, right? I used Twitter, and at the time, I don't think I had a single tweet. I just followed people that I was like interested in hearing their thoughts, mostly like Silicon Valley tech people. And I think the price of Bitcoin went from like almost 20,000 down to like 3,500, right? So people lost like 80 to 90% of their net worth. And I saw really smart people that I respected a lot still tweeting about it and devoting their careers and putting their life savings into it. I'm like, okay, like there's got to be something here. So I Googled what the best book was. So that's the thing I'll often do is like, if I want to learn something, I'll just search the best book on Amazon, and the Bitcoin Standard came up, and I read the Bitcoin Standard by Stephanie Amos. And I told everything kind of clicked there. And so in like kind of March of 2018, I just put I sold like all my stocks and just went all in on Bitcoin.
That was a good choice. Good choice.
I'm a very binary person. Like I can't not right now. I'm like all in on ETH. It's probably not.
That's pretty fun. Yeah, you have a whole background in finance, and like number one rule in finance is to diversify.
Yeah, I mean, I view diversifying as kind of not to make fun of it, like because it's really important, especially right, but if you have super high conviction in something, I don't think diversification makes sense, right? of course, like there's always the chance that you're wrong, but I was looking at it as like, I'm 25. Like if I lose everything, like it's not a big deal. I'll just
you'll make it up somehow.
And probably yeah, exactly. So, but like if I'm totally right, like it could change my life in a big way. So that was kind of my mentality, so, right? Like I think about it in terms of financial capital and human capital, right? So your financial capital is like your money, and like when you're younger, right, like that's very low relative to your human capital, which is kind of your productive years that generate income. And it's kind of diversified in that sense, right? Because it's your financial capital is a very small portion of your total capital. So I didn't mind going all in on.
Yeah, you have a lot of working capital left to use.
Hopefully.
So then, all right. So you're now working at your financial company, and you're all in Bitcoin. What's the next phase that you've moved into? Like you heard about Ethereum after the crash, you went all in. Like, what were you like? This is going to be my life now. Cryptocurrency is what I'm going to study, devote, and focus on.
No, so I actually thought most of the rest of crypto was still a scam. I just understood Bitcoin, and I was a pretty big Bitcoin maxi for a while. I'm not like a toxic Bitcoin maxi, but I was just like, I don't understand how value accrues to these other assets, and which ones will be the winner. Right? It seemed very like .com boom-esque. And I understood Bitcoin, and I thought Bitcoin made sense in kind of a world where central banks around the globe are kind of printing a ton of money. And debasing the monetary supply, and you have dollars growing at crazy rates. The order of magnitude improvement that Bitcoin did on gold, right? Like if gold's inflation rate or stock to flow is like the inflation rate's like 2%, 1.5%. And then Bitcoin's effectively zero. So it's disinflationary and it's capped at 21 million. I got that. And then like the whole decentralized aspect, and it's uncensorable. It made a lot of sense to me. So I was solely in on Bitcoin, and it was just like a savings vehicle, right? Like it was just an investment. I didn't think I would go into it full time. I actually wanted to go into like Web2 tech. I was a huge fan of like Y Combinator, like Paul Graham. I read all of Paul Graham's essays and like Sam Altman. Those people had a pretty big influence on me when I was kind of in the finance world. And I'm like, I think I was 26 at the time. And I was like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it and go into tech. So I quit my job and I started learning. So I went to go get my MBA at Columbia Business School in New York. And I also enrolled in Lambda School, their web development program, too, to like resharpen up my technical skills.
So you're doing both at the same time?
Yeah, I was doing both at the same time.
Full time at least.
And then I was also, and then I had a class in Columbia called Launch Your Startup, that everybody had to come up with a business idea and you kind of do it. And I came up with this idea for a equity research platform, kind of like Substack, but more tailored just to people publishing who wanted to publish equity research. So kind of like a mix between Substack and like Seeking Alpha. So that was my idea, and I started running with it, and it was a great way to like kind of learn how to code. That would be the biggest piece of advice I would also give. Like if people want to learn how to code, just start building something.
That's exactly the reason like how I started coding too, because I have a Telegram bot, crypto callback, where you can just like check the price through an inline command on Telegram. But that was just like for me and my friend who like, I just want to know what the price is while we're chatting, not because like I want to go on CoinGecko or go on CoinMarketCap. So yeah, it's like that's definitely solid advice. That's like the best way to learn is have a project in mind, because otherwise it's so demotivating trying to follow tutorials or try to follow other people's projects and kind of feel like you've gone nowhere. Because
I mean, you do a tutorial and it all makes sense when you're doing the tutorial, and then you try to do it yourself on your own thing, and like nothing is like I have no idea what I'm doing. But like when you build, it kind of forces you to, if there's a bug and you have to debug it, it forces you to understand how everything works. So yeah, it was a great way to learn, is building that project. And then my brother he was a software engineer. He's also my co-founder at GM.
That's awesome.
He's very computery, really good engineer. And he was working on it part-time with me. So there's nothing like a brother to kind of like tell you your code sucks and like you should.
Is he older? He's older, right?
He's younger. So I am 28.
Nice. I have an older
25.
brother, and yeah, I get that. Brother on brother communication.
Yeah. Exactly. So that was a great way to learn. So I like learned how to write code, and I became like a decent engineer. And then I kind of liked the idea so much that I wanted to pursue it full time. I dropped out of Columbia, and I went to go pursue it full time. And I kind of realized I had no idea.
This is for GM or just for the
No, this is okay. It was called Hayek. And yeah, I went full time on it for like 6 months, and I realized I had no idea what I was doing. And I had to go learn what to do. So I ended up, there's this company called Stock, which was doing something very similar, where you link your brokerage account, and it's kind of like Twitter. And I shot the CEO an email. That would be another piece of advice. If you're trying to get a job, do not like apply, like do not just submit your resume blindly. Like build something, build a project, or write something that kind of like shows that you're a capable person, and then email the higher ups at the company. And and I sent the CEO an email with like a demo of what I built, and he was pretty impressed, and he invited me to come in and interview. And I interviewed, and I ended up working there as an engineer. And so they have like an amazingly talented team, and like Silicon Valley backed startup that raised like a ton of money. They have really talented team, and I got to see there how you write production grade code, and how product processes should be run.
It's a whole new world, right? It's like, oh, this is how production and environments work, and this is how I'm supposed to test code, and this is when I'm supposed to publish code.
Exactly.
When I'm doing my own things, I'm like, all right, save to desktop, run. All right, does it work? No, just stop the whole thing. Doesn't matter. No one's using it.
Exactly. Like, it's totally night and day between like code I was writing for Hayek and then the code I had to write at Stock. And like, there's some growing pains. Like, honestly, the first 2 months in, I'm like, I don't know if I could do this, because I had so many nights where I was up until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, hey, like you're supposed to ship this, and I had no idea what to do, and I'd ask my brother for help. But like, that's how you learn, because it forces you to kind of like research this and figure it out. And as long as you don't give up, you'll make it. So so I learned a ton doing it that way. Then around like April, my brother and I started talking about like decentralized social media. I come up with like a million ideas a minute, and my brother's more reserved and calculated. And he tells me most of my ideas are trash. But this one he actually liked. He's like, this is a good idea. Because I was basically saying, people like Balaji and Naval, whose like thoughts I respect a lot, have been talking about decentralized social media for years, and nobody's built a good one, right? We've had like Steemit, we've had BitClout, but I think they got it totally wrong.
I remember Steemit when it first came out. It was pretty big, but I think I checked them recently, and it's just full of spam now. It's just...
Yeah, I mean, what they basically did was copied Reddit's UI and slapped a token on it, right? Which they didn't innovate on the product at all or make it more useful. And they basically created this incentive to just post kind of engagement farming content, and like hack engagement, which is not really a community that anybody wants to participate in. It's kind of just a bunch of people spamming. So I think they got it wrong. Not to trash talk any specific products, but yeah, we were like, somebody's going to build this eventually. This needs to exist. Why not us? And then my brother, he studied computer science at UVA. He graduated a year early, like super, super smart and way better engineer than I am. And we like, all right, let's go full time on it. So we quit our jobs in September, right? So we thought on it for a while.
Yeah, how long were you thinking about it for? That's what I wanted to ask.
From April through September, right? So like, that's usually like, we kept thinking about it. Because often, like, you get excited about an idea, but like 2 weeks later, it's like I'm not that excited about it. But this idea, we just kept getting more and more excited, which I kind of viewed as a good test of, hey, like, we should go full time on this.
Well, did you already? Were you already like following closely to ENS and what they were doing at that time too?
Yeah, I mean, I had an ENS domain. And I switched totally into Ethereum in March,
April. Okay, so right from switching into Ethereum, then thinking about this idea, it's pretty quick.
Well, that's kind of how
every month is like a year.
Right? Like you you get some like little financial incentive, or you buy a little bit and then so I started buying Ethereum in October of last year. And I was buying a little bit, but I kept my core Bitcoin position that I didn't want to touch, because a smart friend that I really respect, he was like, trust me, like you're going to want to buy Ethereum. So I was like, okay, like I don't really get it, but I'll keep buying it. And then you buy a little bit and then now you pay attention to it. It's like, okay, like what's going on here? And then you learn about it. And the most interesting things were kind of like the transition to proof of stake and EIP 1559. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be more scarce than Bitcoin. It's going to be more secure than Bitcoin. And then it has all this organic demand on top of it in form of like DeFi, NFTs, whatever. This might actually be
it's
like
so funny how you say
value.
that your friend told you should buy Ethereum, because I have a text to my friend. He like re-forwarded it to me, but I was a text saying, oh, I regret trading my Bitcoin for Ethereum during the crash, because I'm like, I should have just held Bitcoin. It would have been worth more. But now I'm thanking him for it.
Oh, in the March crash back in 2020?
2017, 2018. Yeah.
2017. Oh, how long?
I mean, I've first heard of Bitcoin, I think 2013, 2011. I don't even remember, but it was like I heard it before it was on the news type of thing. Like I remember Mt. Gox, and I remember all those older exchanges like Poloniex. And I actually remember when Coinbase first came out too. So yeah, I've been following it for a while, but like I was young. I was in high school at the times, or going right into college. So I didn't have any money to put into it. And like, I'm like, oh man, I wish I put everything into it back then, but I couldn't. So, but yeah, I mean, I love the tech anyways. I was always into tech. So I kept following it and watching it grow. And I think now is when I really became, okay, I've been like following this thing and haven't been contributing at all. So now I'm like, it's my turn to help out with the community, help out and contribute with what I know and how I remember and how I envision what cryptocurrency is supposed to be like.
Right. That's awesome. I feel, it's kind of funny how it just becomes all consuming. Like once you hit some threshold of like being into it, it just becomes totally all consuming. I feel like
it's a 24/7 industry. There's no stopping. There's no sleep.
Exactly.
I love that meme where it's like, I quit my 9 to 5 to work 24/7 in crypto.
Exactly. No. But it doesn't feel like work. It's like awesome. I honestly love it. But no, it's so true. It's like I need to like force myself to spend time outside.
Yeah. So like now that went full time into GM, what do you do to like keep yourself away from crypto and keep yourself like sane, or like kind of do some, I don't know, meditation, running? What's your escape?
I try to work out, but I haven't been great at it recently. It's just been, GM's been like kind of crazy with like, we had a ton of user growth in the past like 3 or 4 weeks. So I've been trying to keep up with that, but yeah, I try and work out. I try and do a weekly dinner. I have some friends down here. I'm going to throw them a shout out to Miami Crypto Cats.
Miami Crypto Cats. You heard it here.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll grab dinner like once a week. We just did like a berries class on Sunday.
What class?
I guess that was yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, berries boot camp.
Yeah.
It's like a workout class, and then we got breakfast after. So like kind of stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. I don't really go out at night anymore. I used to when like I was a little younger, but
this is more fun though, right?
I'm not that old anymore, but it's honestly more fun. I'd rather, and then like you go out to a bar or something, and then you're
doesn't feel good, you're not productive.
Day, like you're totally unproductive. Yeah, and then like you have like anxiety and like no, it's just way better not to kind of go out and like do a dinner is like kind of perfect. Maybe like a beer or two, and then like you're totally productive the next day, and then you could kind of keep working on crypto.
Now that so is it just you and your brother are the co-founders? I think you guys have like a pretty large team, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of contributors like Nick Duddy and Sapphire and Magoo and all these guys.
So Magoo is my brother, and we're writing all the code. And then Sapphire and Nick are friends of mine, and they're just helping. They're like helping like moderating, and they're like giving like great product feedback. But they have like other kind of priorities and like jobs. So it's kind of my brother and I are only like the only ones full time on it. And then there's also GM.xyz, who was like the lead moderator of the Zen NFT Discord, and he's been doing. Honestly, I have to thank Nick, Sapphire, and GM.xyz, because they've been helping so much with kind of like the onslaught of community members and like helping maintain the Discord and distilling great. The one really cool thing is that so many cool product ideas come from the community members, right? So they're doing a great job of like distilling that and like finding like the signal through the noise and making it easy to consume for Matt and I, Matt's my co-founder and brother. And yeah, and I think they really just care about like what we're building a lot. And they kind of they've kind of been in it. All three of them have kind of been in it from the beginning, when like we had maybe 30 users and more than half of them were my
That's
friends.
A good friend group. That's like, that's what you want. Like your friends and family are the ones who are supposed to support you the most, right? Especially in the beginning. So that's awesome that you have that.
Yeah, I owe them big time for just, they've done so much. I can't thank them enough.
And now, now that you guys are all working together on this, like, let me see, what are the, I guess, biggest challenges that you're facing in terms of such like a fast growth?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to do, right? Like, we need real-time communication. We need a mobile app. There's so many cool things you can do when you have kind of Web3 primitives, like everybody signing in with a wallet and all the unique things you could do there. We have a massive roadmap and we just have to build it. And we're just kind of like, there's almost like no time and we're trying to build it as fast as we can. So that's been like the biggest challenge, but we're kind of like cranking along, and like it's really helpful to have like the community's been like great and like helping us like prioritize things that are important and maybe not so important. But yeah, that's kind of like the biggest thing. Moderation tools, giving communities like control over the content that's posted in their community and to protect themselves from that.
You guys done a pretty good job, making sure the quality of the content is good. Like, it's when you build something that's supposed to be decentralized or that's open for anyone to use, it's kind of hard to moderate that from like bots, and hard to moderate that from just straight up spam and people trying to scam around. So yeah, good on you guys. Good job on moderating such a fast growth. And I mean, I worked as a community manager for a little while for Utrust, and that was a lot of like, it was a very intense time because you're getting hundreds of Telegram messages every day trying to figure out like how to help people who are in need, or trying to separate out the people who are just trying to scam you or scam other people. So it's like a constant like rush of trying to figure out what is the best method of keeping this organized and keeping yourself like in a good headspace and a good mind space too.
Yeah, no, it's it's like a challenge, and we've kind of been fortunate that there haven't been many spammers. Yeah, and honestly, I think kind of like the tools we have with everybody connecting a wallet helps us protect communities and the platform overall against that, right? So communities can kind of gain access to it by what, like the contents of your wallet, like if you own certain NFTs or social tokens. And then also we kind of made it a rule that you can't sign up with an empty wallet.
I don't know that actually.
Which is really, so we actually just implemented it because just run into this issue where somebody changed their name to some form of hate speech and started commenting everywhere. And we can't have that, right? Like, so, and we could kind of get into our policies on like censorship after this. But basically what happened was, it was Thanksgiving. My brother and I were home for Thanksgiving. We were eating dinner with like our entire family, and we saw this. We have a bot that like just tells us anytime somebody
probably posts. Probably is so addicting to look at.
Well, what it's really useful for is it like helps us respond to people, right? Because there's nothing worse than like spending a lot of time on a post or a thoughtful comment and just publishing it to an empty room. So it's right. My brother and I read pretty much everything, and we'll try and respond with it thoughtfully. And I think that really helped kind of like build the community that we have, right? Like you could post almost anything, and my brother and I will do our best to like answer it if it's a question, or like just support you if it's like a project or stuff like that. And I think that goes a long way. But yeah, we saw that from the bot, and we banned the user. And what they did was they spun up another account.
Gotcha.
And did it again. So what we said was, we're going to make it a requirement where you can't spin up an account with an empty wallet. You need to have at least some ETH in there. And what that does is, right, ETH gas costs are actually coming to our help here, because if you want to spend the $10 of gas to transfer some ETH to an empty wallet, you can do that and create another account and then spam it again and then just get banned. And you're out $10, and like you maybe got one post up that was taken down, right? So it's a really interesting primitive that can help us. I think it will help us solve a lot of the hardest problems in social media. Because if you think about it, like Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, they can't really protect themselves against it, because you can spin up as many email addresses as you want and create as many accounts as you want on those platforms. You don't even have to spin up new email addresses. You could just add like a plus sign to your email address. I don't know if you've ever done
heard
that,
about it.
But like you can create as many accounts with just the same email address, and they have no way to kind of protect themselves against it. But like, and you can imagine this getting a little more sophisticated over time, right? Like you can kind of try and verify if they're like a human or like their transaction history, especially like giving these tools to the community, because that's where we ultimately want to go. Like we don't think a handful of product managers at like Twitter, Facebook, or Reddit should be like deciding what the whole world sees. It seems like a very big power imbalance. Ultimately, we want to give communities these tools to kind of control what
have moderators for each community.
Exactly. And we rolled that moderator functionality out last week. And we're just trying to build as useful features as possible.
Now, who's the, I guess I want to know, who designed the front end? Was it a collaborative effort between you and your brother, or are one of you guys the front end developers?
No, so we're both full stack. So we will break it up by features. So for example, like my brother, he just over this weekend, he did verified NFT profile pictures. And he did that in two days, right? Like, so it's kind of funny because Twitter's been talking about doing this for months. And I saw a product manager at Twitter tweet, he tweeted this morning, like somebody asked, has Twitter given up on verified NFT profile pictures? And the product manager was like, we have 2 meetings about this every week. We have not given up. And I'm like, that's like kind of like everything that's wrong like this, right? Like that shouldn't be like that hard to ship. And like, I get like, it's a little harder to move when you have a lot of tech debt. But my brother shipped it in two days and we got it out. And he did the back end and he did the front end and he did the design too. So the way it kind of works is for that example, he will, we were going back and forth of like, how should the verified signal work, right? We were thinking of maybe doing a ring around the profile picture. Then we were thinking of doing like a badge. And then we tried out a bunch of different badges and he just kind of like screenshots his computer and just sends it to me. And I'm like, I don't really like that. And then we finally found a design that we liked and we're like, all right, let's go with that and just ship it.
So it's NFT verified. Would it, since you're using ENS, would you be able just to look at the avatar profile picture through ENS to use that verification? Or would you have to go on, I guess you would scan the blockchain to see if it was a verified picture?
Yeah, so what happens when a user signs up is we'll download all of their NFTs to that wallet and we'll put those on your user profile. So you can see each person's NFT profile, which I actually find pretty useful because like so many comments and I'm trying to learn more about them. And I see they own like a punk or something like that. I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Like this is probably like a pretty legit person. So it's pretty interesting from that perspective. But basically we'll download all those NFTs and then when you go to change your profile picture, you can choose it from your NFT and kind of crop it so that it looks nice in the circle or in the PFP or the banner image. You could do a verified banner image as well. And then once you do that, we will mark it as verified, and
Gotcha.
then the badge will show up.
Nice. And you're doing like this whole entire platform is currently free and, ad free and free to use. And, like, are you guys going to apply for like Gitcoin grants or Ethereum Foundation grants? How are you going to sustain yourselves long term? What's the plan for that?
Yeah, so we put a lot of thought into this, and we have no plans for ads. So we think like ads fundamentally misalign the incentives of networks and their users, right? Like they're incentivized to kind of keep you hooked as long as possible, even if it's not in your best interest. And we think there'll be a lot of ways to monetize that are not related to ads, right? Because we're so close to users' wallets, and the way we want to do it is by providing useful tools and services. So you can imagine like a big influencer on Twitter, right? Their DMs are totally unusable on Twitter or in Discord because they just get so much spam. And even if they want to reply to a person, it's just impossible because they get so much. And it takes so much of their time. And one feature that we're planning on implementing is, let's just say a famous artist wanted to say, only people who own my NFT collection can DM me. Or you have to own Punks or Bored Apes to DM me. Or if I don't follow you, you have to pay me $10 of ETH to DM me, right? And then all of a sudden, like everybody wins in that scenario because now people can get in touch with who they want to get in touch with, and it's manageable for like those high celebrity like people. So you can imagine something like that where like the platform takes like a small cut, and for providing like useful tools. Another way we want to monetize is again on that building useful tools. So you can imagine, let's just say hypothetically, an engineering DAO creates a community on GM. And that's a very desirable kind of community to get attention in, right? So people, if somebody wanted to post a job listing to that, you can imagine like kind of creating some type of featured post that the community can turn on or off and pay whatever, $100 to post a job listing in that community. And then that would go to that community's treasury. And then the community can like distribute that to the members as well. And then we would take like a small cut of that. Another example is, for example, I was talking to Justin Bonsai, the moderator for the Zen NFT Discord. And he was saying it's kind of unfair that OpenSea gets to take such a massive take rate when they kind of generate all the demand and interest in, right? So you can imagine, I mean, an exchange is just an NFT swapping exchange. It's really just
a transaction,
right? So exactly. So imagine if we gave every community the opportunity to kind of spin up their own exchange within their community for people to buy and trade their NFTs. And that take rate that was going to OpenSea goes to the community treasury, right? And then maybe we take like a small cut as well of that, right? So there's so much tooling that needs to be built. And you can imagine like a premium subscription for like DAOs communities, right? Like they have so many needs in terms of like multi-sig management, all these tools that like you have Cloudland, SourceCred, Snapshot, that they currently, it's very unmanageable for a lot of people. And you have to kind of be a crypto expert to integrate it all into Discord, which is kind of the status quo. And we want to kind of create a very intuitive, vertically integrated solution for these communities. And then we'll monetize accordingly from that. But like, I want to align our interests with the interests of the users. And I don't think advertising does it. I think
that's awesome. I mean, I'm loving what you're saying, so I'm excited for that, and I think it's definitely needed in the space because like I'm on Discord, and I'm joining like dozens of different projects, and everyone has a different verification project, everyone has different ways of handling signage. I'm just like, this is getting too much, and I'm also getting spam from random users. And I'm like, okay, I have to allow all incoming messages to get verified. But then as soon as I do that, I'm getting spammed from people that I don't want to talk to. It's just like, it's like counterproductive and not an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things wrong with Discord. And even though the product's only been up for like 2.5 months, right? We've only been working on it for 2.5 months. I already think it's a very useful complement to Discord. So like, there's mainly 3 main benefits over Discord right now. Like the first would be it's great for long-form discussions with a large number of concurrent users. So for example, when I posted kind of like our 2-week roadmap as a post, and we got like 30 to 50 comments from all of our users, saying like, you should prioritize this, you should do this instead, right? The best comments float to the top, and like really good ideas float to the top. And like you could have replies to that are also ranked. And then the worst ones like kind of are at the bottom. And then it's easy to come back to like a month later. And I've come back to it a few times a month later to kind of check it out and make sure I didn't miss anything. Whereas if you try to have that conversation in Discord,
you lose it
it's
immediately.
almost impossible. You lose it, and then the comments are like all over the place. You can't really follow a conversation. There's no sense of ordering. It's kind of a mess. So that would be like one benefit. Another benefit would be kind of like less information loss. So exactly what you're saying. Right now, you have to hop from server to server, but it's not just server to server. It's channel to channel within each server, and none of the content is ordered, and you don't know what's like can't miss versus like just stupid stuff that you don't have to pay attention to at all. And what we think the feed model is extremely great for this, because you can have all of the content from your communities in one place, and the people you follow in one place. And you know when you're caught up, you could sort it by new, or you could sort it by like top posts. So you know like what's like a must read and what isn't. And you know when you're caught up. So that would be like the second benefit. And then I also think there's a very useful discovery aspect, which is why we integrated the following feature. Right. So I follow you and I see you post in the bonsai community. And I'm like, hey, what's the bonsai community? Let me check it out. And all of a sudden you found this great new community that you never would have found otherwise. Right. So I view those three things as kind of complements of Discord. And then over time, we're already working on direct messaging. And so I'm talking to these communities and I'm asking them, like, Discord isn't serving you. Like, what do you need to move your entire community over to GM? And the two biggest things are kind of like real-time communication, and then also a mobile app, right? Like
everyone's on mobile now, so
right. But like,
I mean, it's like it's tough to do. And plus, I think I even mentioned once was like the most difficult thing about having a mobile app is if you're going to sign in with your Ethereum wallet. It's like if you're ever on the go and your ledger is at home or something, it's hard to sign in. You can't sign in. And I'm curious and excited to like maybe see how that plans out, because I think one of my recommendations was like, scan your desktop QR code with your phone to sign in that way if it's already logged in somewhere else. But again, I don't know how the coding would work behind that. Probably easier in my head than it is in real life.
No, I think that could be a viable option. So once you log in once, you're logged in, right? Like, so you don't have to log in every single time you use the app. So another option would be to spin up like a MetaMask wallet that like you access from your phone and just connect that to your account. And that could be your login wallet, right? So like, so you don't have to use your hardware wallet if you want to access it from different devices, right? So that's probably, those would be two solutions. But like, it'd be super easy if you're like signed in on your desktop, and then you can just scan a QR code and then that logs you in on the mobile app. And then the biggest thing is just that first sign on, because once you're signed in, you don't have to log in again.
Overall, the experience is very seamless. I mean, I remember back in the day, like when we had to use Bitcoin wallets or Ethereum wallets, it was a entire client you had to download on your desktop. It was an actual desktop program client that you download, and you view your wallet on there and you sync it with the blockchain. It was a definitely rudimentary early phase of cryptocurrency. And now look at us. We're just signing in on with Ethereum on a platform where we can just talk with our friends and talk with our communities. That's like pretty much what I hear a lot of, is like GM is kind of like a cross between Reddit and Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. Like cross between Reddit and Twitter, with like that's making use of all these cool Web3 primitives that we have. And I personally think sign-in with Ethereum is awesome, right? Because there's I feel like usernames and passwords are going to kind of be like a thing of the past.
Yeah.
So, you should just be able to sign in everywhere.
I'm already sick of username and passwords. I'm like, just please make it easy for me. Like, this is unnecessarily difficult. So, yeah, I mean, I'm pumped for you, man. I'm excited to see what you and your brother and your whole entire team and community is like developing and growing. I think you're solving definitely a needed issue in the space, especially a needed issue with community. You know, how communities work and how communities are found with each other and how communities collaborate in general. And yeah, I'm pretty excited for it.
Thanks. I think like the other thing I would kind of bring up that we haven't really touched on yet is that like one of the main reasons I'm so passionate about this project, and my brother is too, is because we feel like this is such a pressing issue with society. Not to get too like idealistic, but right, like if you think about it, because Facebook, Twitter, Reddit hoard all the data and store it in their databases, and that's not accessible to anyone else, the innovation in the space kind of stops with them. And like we were talking about before, you have like a handful of product managers at these companies kind of like making like these tremendously important decisions of like what algorithm is optimal for the feed, what content should be censored and not censored, right? And I personally don't think that should be up to like just a handful of product managers. What I think our vision for this is, so I've kind of communicated this to the community. Our plan is to progressively decentralize over time. So we have all our data currently on AWS, and we're building it like a traditional Web 2 application, because we're like, if we don't build something useful, then none of the other stuff matters, right? So we're trying to make it useful. And then over time, and then also like it'd be 1,000x harder trying to do this on decentralized architecture, and it'd be too expensive with like the current state of blockchain technology. So over time, we're going to decentralize. So, and the way we plan on doing this is first, we're going to like open source our code base in like the next couple months. There's just a big process around open sourcing. We need to document everything and like create processes for like solving issues and stuff like that. So we just have to find time to do that. But in the next couple of months, our code base will be entirely open source. We'll open up our APIs. And then what we eventually want to put all of our data on chain. So
that's
you can
imagine,
be a
big migration,
right? So, yeah. So it'll be pretty big, and it's going to be a really hard problem. But I think it'll be worth it because you can imagine a world where everybody has read and write access to the data of any of this social network, and everybody kind of reads and writes to the same kind of protocol. What that will allow for is anybody with a good idea of how to approach some of like the hardest problems in social media will be able to kind of spin up their own client and express their own view on how these issues should be solved. And hopefully this will result in like a Darwinian process where the best ideas on how to solve these issues rise to the top, and the other ones are kind of like, and the weakest ideas are kind of weeded out. And hopefully it solves like a lot of the hardest problems in social media today. It's kind of like our long-term vision for this. And then GM will hopefully be like the most popular client, right? But giving everyone the right to defect from that is really important to us. And we, so I mean, we really do.
Yeah, I mean, it shows. And I mean, that's what we need, right? Is more of people who actually care about the industry and the space, and building something that is for the people, not just for yourself or just for monetization uses.
I think that's why we also have like such a strong community.
Ethereum
too,
community
right?
is strong,
like,
they love working together, and it's beautiful. I love seeing it.
Yeah, and people have like grilled me on all these things, like where's the data stored? How are you going to decentralize over time? How is this going to work in the future? And like it forced me to kind of write up like this FAQ and the About Us page that kind of like dives into these things. And I think this kind of like long-term mission really resonates with the community. And for example, we had YZ.eth. I don't know if you saw this, but he bought GM.xyz. That wasn't cheap. That was like $3,100, and he just gave it to us because he like really cared about what we're building and didn't want to see somebody kind of like squat on that domain and try and sell it to us at a higher price. Like, and we're gonna try and do something really cool with it. We still have to like figure that out, but it's kind of really cool. And then you have people like just some bonsai who like I didn't know him personally. He wasn't one of my friends who I kind of guilted into like helping out. He like genuinely believes in what we're building, and he's been so helpful with the community. And then there's just so many people like that in the community that are helping with moderation and posting ideas and helping us debug stuff. And it's honestly amazing. I'm like,
it makes you want to work harder and more for the people, for the community. It's like, oh wow, it's like, it's better than cash sometimes. It's just, I mean, I think that's something we've like lost a lot of in society now, is just community, a sense of community. Everything is like everyone each to his own, everyone figure out your own problems, everyone like live your own life. But sometimes a community is needed, and it's great, and it brings out this social need that we have as humans, is to grow together and build together. And yeah, that's one thing I love from Ethereum especially, is like their community is really open and welcoming and wants to build the right thing for the future.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
I wanted to ask, you were saying that, I remember earlier you were saying that you read a lot, and reading books is like the way you learn, and reading articles. So if you had to give some starter tips for someone new into crypto, what 2 books would you recommend for them to read?
That's
you can give more if you want.
That's a really tough question. I feel like the Bitcoin Standard is really great for like understanding, for like steel manning the Bitcoin argument. But I feel like it's a bit dated, just because so many things have changed that I personally think Ethereum's like a superior store of value. So I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, if you're curious, I read like The Infinite Machine is another like good one. It's kind of like the story of Ethereum. It's pretty interesting. But it doesn't really explain like the fundamentals. There's also like this book, DeFi in the Future of Finance, which is kind of good. It goes into like kind of like explains everything in DeFi, right? So it's pretty useful from that perspective. I don't know if I'd recommend a book to do it though. Try to think. Honestly, the way I tell most people to get started is like listen to the Bankless podcast. Like the Bankless podcast is pretty good, and they it's very like beginner friendly.
Yeah.
And then there's like some blog posts that I really like, but like it's kind of weird. There's not like one killer resource to kind of explain everything. You have to like assemble bits and pieces and kind of
you watch it grow at the same time.
Exactly.
So now that you've been in the crypto scene for a little while now, what is your crypto pet peeve?
My crypto pet peeve. Let me think. Honestly, I get like a little bit triggered when I see kind of like VCs like pumping like ETH killers, because I don't think they're painting like an accurate narrative, and mostly to kind of like just pump their bags. I might like annoy people. This might trigger. I don't know who's listening to this, so it might trigger people. Look, I'm not an ETH maxi. I personally think that like chains like Solana there's real innovation, there's real tech there. If I think of somebody like my youngest brother who just graduated college, right, and like maybe has a couple $1,000s from his first job, that like ETH gas fees will just eat you up, and it's like totally inaccessible, right? Where go use Solana and like learn how all this stuff works, and it's like great for that. But where I get a little triggered, and I think it's like a little bit of a pet peeve, is that when people act like Solana or AVAX kind of solved blockchain scalability. Right. When they haven't, right? They've just kind of made certain trade-offs. And eventually, once there's enough demand, right? Like if there's enough demand, there's always going to be demand for cheap block space. And once it hits like a certain threshold, they're going to run into the same high fee problems that Ethereum's running into right now. And Ethereum's kind of in this awkward stage where it's transitioning from everything happening at mainnet to everything happening at layer 2s. And right now, right, like, so it's kind of like L2s aren't quite here yet. There's not EVM compatibility or EVM equivalence. It's really hard for the mainnet applications to kind of like import their apps onto these L2s. There's no tokens yet to like incentivize people to adopt them. And then the tech just isn't quite here yet. A lot of it's in beta. So people are like looking at Ethereum and they're saying, oh my gosh, it costs like it does. Like if you want to like use like the purple, like I think it cost me like a couple $100 of gas to do that, right? And like that's not accessible for most people. So it's like this awkward stage. But eventually, I personally think the only way that the ecosystem scales to millions of transactions per second is to have kind of like the base layer focus on kind of consensus, decentralization, censorship resistance, and like data availability. And then rollups will kind of like use that settlement layer to kind of, and then there would be thousands of rollups on Ethereum and get kind of like the levels of throughput we need. So that's kind of like my big macro view. And I think it's like kind of unfair for people to like FUD Ethereum and say, hey, like Ethereum's Ethereum's like comparing it to like a mainframe or something like that, and it's outdated tech when they're just doing it the right way. And
I feel like people need to like the famous trilemma of blockchain technologies or of crypto is, there's three things that you have to look at. It's like what, decentralization, scalability, and what was the last one?
Decentralization, scalability. I don't know.
Me too.
I'm drawing a blank here.
Space storage? I don't know. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, I'm looking it up. Decentralization,
security,
scalability,
yeah.
and security.
So now that we all know together, make sure everyone reads up on that, because that's exactly what you were talking about. Like for Solana, I think they gave up on decentralization to ensure scalability and security. But I don't know. It's like the growth of it all.
Yeah, I mean, it like takes like 256 gigabytes of RAM to kind of run a node, which is insane. And it leads, right, like you saw like in the recent outage, right? Like they had a 13-hour outage, and they're able to kind of like patch a software update to all of the validators in like 13 hours, which like kind of speaks to how centralized it kind of is. And even, right, like, and then Anatoly, who I respect a lot, he's like a builder, he's shipping a ton of code, and like, right, like they're really innovating, and like they're really smart people. They are, his argument to steelman it is basically like, as hardware costs come down with Moore's law, that you will, that anybody will be able to kind of meet those requirements, which is fair. But like at the same time, there's going to be like latency is going to be like the main issue with the network, and like keeping all those nodes in sync. And even if it only hits like, right, like the theoretical max right now is like 50,000 transactions per second, but I don't think Solana's doing anywhere close to it. I think they're doing like maybe like a couple thousand transactions per second. And like even if they do hit their theoretical max that Anatoly talks about, like that's not going to be enough for like how big all the use cases are going to be.
Yeah, if you just look at like Visa transactions alone, if we're going to replace Visa, we got to be able to do a lot of transactions real quick.
Exactly. And some people talk about like a multi-chain world, which I don't really subscribe to, because Vitalik actually writes some really good stuff on this, is that all of the bridges and are kind of vulnerabilities. And then the network is kind of like only as strong as like the weakest link, right? So if you have kind of like if a blockchain is building on like another blockchain, which builds on like another, right? If these dApps, right, like kind of like build off of these other blockchains, then if there's one that like is like only 1% is secure as Ethereum, that will be like kind of a weakness, like in the armor of the entire system as a whole. In my opinion, the only way that makes sense is like Ethereum as like focused on security and decentralization, and then everything on top. And then you have things like Hop protocol and stuff like that to kind of solve composability. Yeah,
there's a lot. I mean, that's we're all like betting on and like hoping for, is like for this to be done properly and accurately and safely with Ethereum, and hopefully the L2s that are built on top of it are able to also follow the same structure and give us that ability to transact as much as we want to without having to pay such high gas fees and paying all that cost to actually run it too. So I'm excited for it. I'm pumped for the future for all this, but I guess we'll see, because it looks like now we're kind of calming down our cycle. So who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I kind of stopped looking at the price. I'm just like so confident in Ethereum that like like
Good.
Nothing's gonna shake me.
Last question of the day. So I like to just keep it a wholesome question. So what made you smile the most recently? What's a nice wholesome moment that kind of got you grinning from ear to ear?
Honestly, I'm gonna have to give a shout out to Hero Bit Bob on GM. He's been running like these awesome pixel art competitions. And he's been like donating like $100 of his own money to like sponsor it. And like, there's been some really cool art, and he's really kind of like spearheaded that entire community, which has been awesome to see. And like, people are like experimenting in pixel art and like who never like really considered it, or like trying it and like enjoying it. It's honestly really cool. And he's such like he's like the nicest guy ever. We're sending him some swag. So like a GM hoodie and like a t-shirt. As like a little thank you, but like honestly, he's been great, and yeah, he's made me smile a lot.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining me. Everyone who's listening to this, please check out GM.xyz. Find your favorite community or create your own. But yeah, thank you again for joining me. I had a great time.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much for having me.